Welcome back for part 2 of our first series of lectures, and what we're going to focus on now is what the marketing research process actually is. Now, marketing research is something that doesn't have an agreed upon definition, and I think it's really important for us to understand that. The word marketing itself doesn't have an agreed upon definition. There are different ways of looking at it, and certainly the American Marketing Association has done its part to try to define that, but the word or the phrase marketing research doesn't have a formal definition that every particular marketing researcher agrees upon. And in fact, there's another term that's often used synonymously with marketing research called market research, which to some of us in the industry really grates on us, because we see market research as being really a form of marketing research that's isolated to looking at demographics and markets and things like that, as opposed to marketing research, which is really more of a broad term that talks about all of the aspects of the marketing function. So depending on who you ask, there are different definitions, but the definition that's given in your textbook is that marketing research is the process of designing, gathering, analyzing, and reporting information that may be used to solve a specific problem. And those 4 points are really important: designing, gathering, analyzing, and reporting. So we're not just going out and doing surveys and then we're done with the surveys and we know how to make our decision. We're not just going out and doing a focus group. We're not just gathering a bunch of information. I mean, there's much more to marketing research than that. We're also not just going out and reading a bunch of books or looking at magazines or asking a few people that we know what they think. Those are all ways that we can conduct research, but it's a more formal process than that. So we start off, and we're going to talk about this in our next lecture series, we start off designing studies to make sure that they are sound in terms of the scientific approach that we're trying to use with the research tools that we're going to employ. And we have to make sure that the design doesn't invalidate the data before we go out and collect it. And then we're going to go into a process of gathering data, what we often call field work. And gathering data can be a very quick process. It can be a very long process depending on how you do things. It can be something where you're just gathering one type of information. It could be something where you're gathering a lot of information. So it's important to understand that gathering data is a very often very time-intensive part of the marketing research process, but it also can be over really quick, and we'll talk about that in some of our future series as well. Analyzing data is something that you probably think about when you think about research. You probably think about, a guy like me. I'm not wearing my glasses right now, but let's put them on. Kind of nerdy looking guy, poring over a computer and looking at data and coming up and saying something smart. That's data analysis. But analyzing actually has a lot more to it than just doing that. I mean, there's a lot of steps involved in just getting the data ready to be analyzed, and understanding how it can be analyzed and understanding how it can be validated. Then finally we have this step called reporting, and actually, in my opinion, reporting is a step that doesn't get enough credit for how important it is, because reporting is where a researcher or a research team goes in front of a client organization or or just a single client and tells them what the data have to say. And it's really crucial at that point that the researcher is a good communicator and that the client is able to understand what the data actually have to say. I can't tell you how many times I've given a research presentation and I've had to make sure that someone in the room didn't walk out with a false impression of what the data had to say because they heard what they wanted to hear and they tuned out to the rest of what was being said. It's really important when you're reporting research to make sure that the message is received clearly and that you are communicating very accurately what the data have to say and not misleading in any way. And at the bottom of this definition it says information that may be used to solve a specific marketing problem. And again, that's a really important point, because one of the things we're going to talk about in future series is how defining the problem in marketing research is actually probably the most important step after establishing the fact that you actually need marketing research. If you set out to solve a problem and the problem that you identify is the wrong one, you can really set yourself up for failure. So again, we'll talk about that in future classes. Now, this definition is not the only definition of marketing research, and in fact, The American Marketing Association has its own definition. And theirs is that marketing research is the function that links the consumer, customer, and public to the marketer through information that's used to identify and define marketing opportunities and problems, to generate, refine, and evaluate marketing actions, to monitor marketing performance, and to improve the understanding of marketing as a process. And these really aren't that different from the categories that Burns and Bush offered in their steps. Identify and define marketing opportunities and problems is definitely a use of marketing research, and it's something that we try very hard to do, particularly with qualitative research, where qualitative research is intended to help us to really understand context and meaning and depth behind a topic. Generate, refine, and evaluate marketing actions. We often can conduct that through different forms of research, but we have to monitor things from time to time, and monitoring is another aspect. We can generate benchmarks and we can generate numerical trends that we can look at to see if our actions are actually successful. And if they're not, we can use a process called iteration to try to improve upon what we're doing. We can drill down and do a in-depth investigation into why our actions are not turning out the way that we thought they would. There are all kinds of opportunities that we have with marketing to both generate, refine, and evaluate our actions, and then to monitor the performance of them. And then finally, improve the understanding of marketing as a process. This is kind of a higher-minded ideal behind marketing research, and I think that some of this really comes more from the academic side than it does from the practical side, which is where I work in the practical end of things, doing applied research. But improving the understanding of marketing as a process is huge, and it's something that we want to make sure that any research that we're doing can help us to be better marketers, can help us to make better decisions, and to have a better understanding of the effectiveness of what it is that we're doing. So this AMA definition, it's a little wordy, but it gets at the same heart of what Burns and Bush were trying to say. Ultimately, when you think about what marketing research is really about, I think probably the best way to think about it in really simple terms is that marketing research is about looking at questions for which we don't have any answers and using good research methods to try to find those answers. And as I said before, at the heart of all marketing research is really generally a decision. There are a lot of cases where you'll see people conduct marketing research just because there's something that they would like to know. It's what we call nice to know information. My view is, as a practitioner, as someone who does this for a living, is that if you're going to go to the trouble to conduct marketing research, if you're going to allocate the resources and the time and the energy into conducting research, nice to know is not good enough. We want to get away from what's nice to know and really focus on what we need to know. Need to know to solve a problem, to make a decision, to make sure that we make the right decision so that we can minimize risk and maximize reward. And that's really what this is all about.